I'm several light years from my apartment.
I'm not an astronaut.
If you don't go, you die.
The sun is dying.
I'm just a teacher at Grover Cleveland Middle.
I need you to come with us.
Every star was infected by its neighbor, except one.
We build a ship to go there.
It's 11.9 light years away.
Everything on this planet will go extinct.
I put the not an astronaut. I can't even moonwalk.
News reports discuss the discovery of the Petrova Line, a strange infrared phenomenon near Venus, first spotted by amateur astronomer Irina Petrova. Scientists analyze footage from the Arclight probe and are stunned to see tiny moving organisms within the line, something alive, feeding on the sun's energy. Back in a classroom, Grace is revealed to be a passionate middle school science teacher. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. While teaching his students about the speed of light, one student asks if these mysterious organisms are eating the sun. Grace explains that the effect is small for now, but over time, it could significantly reduce the sun's energy output, potentially leading to global cooling and catastrophic crop failure.
I heard that all the crops will die, the economy will freefall, and half the earth will die of starvation.
The film project Hail Mary opens with Ryland Grace waking up from an induced coma inside a pod aboard a mysterious spacecraft. An onboard AI voice detects his eye movement and begins guiding him through basic cognitive tests. When asked simple questions like, "What is 2 plus 2?" Grace answers incorrectly, revealing severe memory loss. Ignoring warnings, he struggles out of the pod, his body weak and uncoordinated after a long period of inactivity. As he stumbles through the silent ship, he calls out for help, but no one responds. Soon, he discovers the bodies of his crewmates. They didn't survive. Completely alone, Grace explores further and comes across a highly advanced scientific instrument, instantly recognizing it as an atomic resolution scanning electron microscope. Confused, he wonders how he knows this despite having no memory of who he is. At the ship's computer, he asks for guidance, only to learn that he is now the sole surviving crew member. When he attempts to contact Earth, the AI informs him that any transmission would take nearly 12 years to arrive. A map confirms the horrifying truth. He is not near Earth at all, but light years away, orbiting an unknown star. With no memory of his mission and no clear way home, Grace realizes he is completely isolated in deep space. The story then flashes back to Earth. Eva Stratt, a high-ranking official leading the Petrova task force, visits Grace. She references an old scientific paper he wrote, where he argued that life might exist without water. Although Grace was previously dismissed from academia for his controversial views, Eva sees value in his thinking. She reveals that samples from the Petrova line have been recovered, and whatever these organisms are, they can survive near the sun, something no water-based life should be able to do. Grace is brought into a secure lab to study the samples. Initially, the organisms appear invisible across all electromagnetic wavelengths, but further testing reveals they are microscopic alien life forms. Excited, Grace declares this humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life. However, the sample suddenly dies, cutting the moment short. Despite the setback, the analysis provides crucial insight. The organisms are made of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, meaning they are, in fact, water-based. This discovery shatters Grace's long-held belief that life doesn't require water. Still, he uncovers something even more important. These organisms emit powerful infrared radiation as they move, using energy from the sun for propulsion. In simple terms, they behave like living spacecraft. When Eva asks why these organisms gather near Venus instead of closer to the sun, like Mercury, Grace doesn't yet have an answer.
Why did it go to Venus?
I don't know.
As Eva prepares to leave, Grace insists he wants to stay involved, realizing that understanding these creatures could be the key to saving Earth. Eva Stratt reveals that she already has hundreds of top biologists working on the mystery, but Ryland Grace insists he has more to offer. Dropping his modesty, he claims he's actually a highly skilled molecular biologist. Eva isn't looking for safe thinkers. She wants people willing to challenge accepted science. Impressed by his mindset, she recruits him into the project and gives him access to the last remaining samples of the alien organism, now named astrophage, meaning star eater. Grace begins working with his security partner, Carl, to figure out why astrophage migrated to Venus. They build a simple experimental setup, a crude box that simulates Venus's carbon dioxide-rich environment and emits infrared light. When they test it, things quickly get out of control. The astrophage escape their container and disappear into the box. Forced to act fast, Grace climbs inside and manually retrieves the samples. While doing so, he notices something shocking. There are more organisms than before. The astrophage have reproduced. This discovery changes everything. Grace realizes that astrophage use carbon dioxide as part of their reproductive process, explaining why they thrive near Venus.
We figured out how astrophage breeds.
Shortly after, he is transported to a secret offshore facility, where a global team of scientists demands answers. When Grace explains his findings, one question stands out. How long would it take to produce 2 million kilograms of astrophage? Confused, Grace realizes he hasn't been told the full story. Eva grants him full clearance, and the truth is revealed. The astrophage are spreading from star to star, draining energy and slowly dimming them, including Earth's sun. However, one nearby star system, Taeti, remains unaffected. No one knows why. To solve this mystery, a spacecraft called the Hail Mary has been built. It will travel nearly at light speed to Taeti, study why it's immune, and send the findings back to Earth. Astrophage itself is the key. It can be used as an incredibly powerful fuel source, but also extremely dangerous. A small miscalculation could cause catastrophic destruction. Even more grim, the mission is one way. There is no fuel to return. The crew, pilot, engineer, and scientist, are expected to die in space. But the alternative is far worse: the collapse of Earth's ecosystem and eventual human extinction.
The astronauts die in space.
Yes.
Back in the present, Grace, still alone on the ship, regains more of his memory. He visits the bodies of his crewmates, Commander Yao and Engineer Ilyushkina, and gives them a quiet, emotional farewell by releasing them into space. Soon after, the ship automatically enters orbit around Taeti. Grace panics, insisting to the AI that he isn't qualified to pilot, but the system completes the maneuver on its own. As he studies the star, he notices something strange. Taeti also has a Petrova line, meaning astrophage is present, but the star isn't dimming like others. Before he can fully process this, the ship detects an approaching object. Then another. The second object moves more slowly, almost as if it's adjusting to him. Grace realizes this might not be random. It could be a form of communication. Determined to find out, he decides to go outside and intercept it. Despite having no real experience, Grace prepares for a spacewalk, nervously talking himself through each step. Floating alone in the vast emptiness of space, he faces one of the most terrifying moments of his life, about to make contact with something unknown. Ryland Grace successfully retrieves the strange object during his risky spacewalk and brings it back inside the Hail Mary. Upon inspection, he's puzzled to find that the artifact is made of xenon, a gas on Earth, which suggests the alien species has technology far beyond human understanding. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. As he studies it further, Grace realizes the object is actually a model. It contains a representation of the alien's home system along with Taeti's Petrova line. Understanding this as a form of communication, Grace responds by adding Earth's location to the model and sends it back. This begins a fascinating exchange, as both sides trade increasingly complex artifacts to share information. Soon, the alien constructs a tunnel connecting the two spacecraft. Gathering his courage, Grace enters the tunnel and makes first physical contact. On the other side, he sees the alien's hand, rock-like, with 3 fingers, and realizes it has been observing and recreating his actions through models. After a brief interaction, Grace returns to his ship. Both vessels then rotate and sink, creating a shared gravity environment that allows safer interaction. When the tunnel reconnects at a new location, Grace approaches again, this time face-to-face, separated only by a transparent barrier between their atmospheres. The alien finally reveals itself, a rocky, multi-limbed being with no visible face, moving in ways that seem strange but intentional. At first, Grace is startled, but he quickly understands that the alien is simply mimicking his gestures. The creature communicates through musical tones and uses echolocation to perceive its surroundings. Grace names it Rocky. When Rocky signals for him to remove his helmet, Grace hesitates but eventually trusts the moment and discovers he can breathe. Rocky has adjusted the environment to include oxygen. From there, the two begin building a shared language. Grace uses hand signals and simple concepts like numbers and time, while Rocky responds with its own equivalents. They even establish a version of a thumbs up, though Rocky's version is reversed. Grace carefully records everything, documenting what may be humanity's first successful communication with an alien species. Rocky reveals it is an engineer capable of creating objects using a solid metallic form of xenon, which Grace names Xenonite. When words fail, Rocky uses creative demonstrations, like puppet shows, to explain ideas. Through these exchanges, Grace learns that Rocky comes from a planet called Arid, and like Earth, its star is also being drained by astrophage. Both of them are survivors of failed missions. Rocky had a crew of 23, but all of them died, leaving him alone, just like Grace. When Rocky asks why Grace is alone, Grace admits he doesn't remember. Rocky accepts this without judgment, assuming Grace will figure it out once he returns home. Their bond grows stronger as they share more about themselves. Grace explains human sleep, which initially terrifies Rocky, who thinks it means death. When Rocky learns that humans are unconscious and vulnerable during sleep, it reveals something important. Its own species becomes completely paralyzed when they rest and must always be guarded. Without hesitation, Rocky offers to stand watch while Grace sleeps, a gesture that deeply moves him.
Iridians don't sleep like a human does. They seem legitimate.
Through a flashback, Grace recalls meeting the original Hail Mary crew, Commander Yao, Engineer Ilyakina, and Scientist Du Bois. He remembers explaining how astrophage powers the ship's engines and how dangerous it is. When he expressed doubt about joining a one-way mission, Yao told him something that now resonates deeply. Bravery isn't about fearlessness. It's about having someone worth being brave for. Back in the present, Rocky crosses fully into Grace's ship using a pressurized spherical suit. It immediately begins exploring, touching everything, and even rearranging the lab, calling it inefficient. It casually asks where its bedroom is, forcing Grace to accept the reality. He now has an alien roommate. As Grace continues documenting their interactions, he realizes just how different Rocky's species is. Rocky can hear through walls, eliminating any sense of privacy, and its species has no understanding of concepts like relativity or radiation. Despite these differences, the two form a powerful partnership, two lone survivors from dying worlds, working together to solve a problem that threatens both their civilizations. Grace and Rocky uncover a crucial piece of the puzzle. Rocky explains that his crew didn't die from the mission itself, but from space radiation. He only survived because his quarters were next to the astrophage fuel tanks, which absorbed most of the radiation. This realization helps them better understand the properties of astrophage and its limitations. Together, they focus on the central mystery. Astrophage clearly reaches Tau Ceti, evidenced by the Petrova line, but unlike other stars, Tau Ceti is not dimming. That means something must be controlling or consuming the astrophage population. To investigate, they decide to collect samples directly from the planet where astrophage reproduces. They name this planet Adrian, after Rocky's mate back on Arid. Entering orbit, they manage to retrieve samples from Adrian's upper atmosphere. What Grace discovers inside is astonishing, not just astrophage, but an entire ecosystem. There are microorganisms, complex life forms, and most importantly, a predator, an organism that feeds on astrophage. This is the breakthrough. The The reason Taeti isn't dimming is because this native life form keeps astrophage in check. If they can bring this organism back to their respective home systems, it could consume the astrophage there and save both stars. For the first time, they have a real solution.
Earth, we die.
However, getting more of this organism is extremely dangerous. The Hail Mary cannot enter Adrian's atmosphere due to intense pressure and gravity. Rocky proposes a bold solution, a 5-kilometer-long xenonite chain with a collector at the end, lowered into the atmosphere like a fishing line. Grace will have to pilot the ship at a precise angle while Rocky controls the chain. One mistake could destroy them both. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Rocky begins training Grace to pilot, but the sessions are rough. Rocky is strict and demanding, while Grace struggles to keep control. During one session, Rocky innocently asks why Grace doesn't simply return to Earth and explain everything himself. Grace hesitates, then admits the truth. This mission was never meant to return. There wasn't enough astrophage fuel for a round trip. Once the mission is complete, he is expected to die in space. Rocky is devastated by this revelation. It refuses to accept Grace's fate and asks how much fuel he would need to get home. When Grace says 2 million kilograms, Rocky offers its own fuel supply, even though it would add 6 more years to its journey back to Earth. Grace tries to refuse, but Rocky insists. Overwhelmed, Grace breaks down, realizing he never truly accepted his death. In a rare and emotional moment, Rocky embraces him in an awkward but sincere gesture of comfort. On the day of the collection mission, they lower the chain into Adrian's glowing, turbulent atmosphere. Grace ventures outside the ship to retrieve the collector while Rocky guides him. Just as success seems within reach, disaster strikes. Grace is hit by debris and loses control of the collector. At the same time, the ship descends too deep into the atmosphere, and the immense gravity begins crushing the hull. Rocky urgently tells Grace to abandon the collector, but Grace refuses to give up. He manages to secure it and return inside just in time. However, the damage is severe. 2 fuel compartments are compromised, forcing Grace to eject them, losing a significant portion of their reserves. The ship barely escapes and stabilizes in orbit, but the violent stress knocks Grace unconscious. In a desperate move, Rocky breaks through the barriers separating their environments to save him. It drags Grace to safety and places an oxygen mask over him. But this act comes at a cost. Rocky begins to weaken in the oxygen-rich atmosphere, which is toxic to its species. At this critical moment, another memory returns to Grace. Just before launch, a catastrophic accident occurred during testing. A tiny amount of astrophage, just 1 milligram, triggered a massive explosion, instantly killing an entire lab team. The danger of their mission and the sacrifice required becomes even more real as Grace drifts between life and death, and Rocky risks everything to save him. The mission cannot be delayed. Missing the launch window would set everything back by months, and time is something humanity no longer has. Eva Strat urgently needs a replacement science officer, and Ryland Grace is the only viable candidate. However, Grace refuses. He insists he is not an astronaut, has no proper training, and cannot handle the physical demands of space travel. Strat remains firm and gives him a choice: go on the mission or stay on Earth and face extinction along with the rest of humanity. She gives him 3 hours to decide. Grace ultimately refuses. Without hesitation, Strat orders him sedated. As he tries to escape, he is overpowered, and just before losing consciousness, Strat tells him that this decision is not a betrayal, but an act of belief in his abilities. Back in the present, Grace wakes up aboard the spacecraft and discovers that Rocky is missing. Following a trail of damage, he finds Rocky in critical condition. Since Iridians become completely paralyzed while sleeping, Rocky is defenseless. Grace stays by his side, protecting him just as Rocky once protected him. While Rocky recovers, Grace continues working alone. He successfully engineers a modified version of the predator organism, naming it Tamoeba. Unlike the original, this strain can survive in nitrogen, making it viable for both Earth and Earth. After some time, Rocky recovers and rejoins Grace. The two celebrate their success. Grace gives Rocky a laptop containing all of humanity's knowledge along with a model of Earth. Rocky, having nothing material to offer, is told by Grace that his friendship and help have already meant everything. Eventually, the time comes for them to separate. Since Iridians do not have a word for goodbye, they part in silence as their ships drift away from each other. With the mission complete and new fuel provided by Rocky, Grace begins his journey back to Earth. The onboard computer estimates the trip will take just over 4 years. However, a new problem arises. The Tamoeba has evolved and begun consuming the xenonite material used in Rocky's ship. While Grace manages to contain the issue on his own vessel, he realizes that Rocky's entire ship is at risk. Without intervention, Rocky will lose all fuel and life support. Faced with a choice, Grace decides to turn back. Before doing so, he launches 4 data probes, named John, George, Paul, and Ringo, toward Earth, carrying all the research, samples, and mission data needed to save humanity. Grace returns to Rocky and rescues him. Together, they make their way to Eret. In the final moments, Rocky's species successfully uses the knowledge from Earth to create a habitable environment for Grace. He begins teaching once again, this time to young Iridians, continuing his role as an educator in a completely new world. I hope you enjoyed the recap. Please hit that like button and make sure to subscribe. See you in the next recap.